Today we're going to have another JetBoat Pilot first, doing an oil change on the Yamaha JetBoat. This change video is going to be the same for all Yamaha boats, even Yamaha Waverunners, but today we're on a 2021 252 SD. Let's get at it. Hey folks, Will Owen here, JetBoatPilot.com. Let's go over some of the things that you're going to need right up front, and then we'll get started. From JetBoatPilot.com, you can purchase your oil change kits. This one uses a KT10 kit for the 1.8 liter engines. It's Watercraft 2 oil change kit. Comes with 4 quarts oil and a filter. You're going to need 2 for 2 engines. Also, because you can't drain the oil without an extractor, you're going to need to purchase an extractor of some sort. You can get the 6 quart or the 12 quart from JetBoatPilot.com. Whether you get it from us or not, make sure you have an extractor because you're not getting the oil out without an extractor. You can also get them on Amazon and other places. You're also going to need a couple extra things. First, I like to have a piece of cardboard to lay on the floor inside the cockpit so I don't mess up my floors. Also, you're going to need to probably have yourself some sort of jug to drain the extra oil out if you have this little 6 quart guy and you have a twin engine boat. If you have a 12 quart, it's probably not as big a deal to have something like this laying around, but in case you do have the 6, have you a little extra canister to dump the oil so you can measure your oil on the second engine. It's important to start the oil change with an empty reservoir. We'll talk about that in a minute. Have yourself a funnel of some sort, lots of paper towels, and if you can get your hands on one, recommend a oil filter removal wrench like this one, strap wrench, something to help you get the filter off and put it back on. That's it. Let's do it. All right, for step 1 in this process, what I like to do is get the engine started, let them run for a few minutes on the hose. If you have not cranked the engines in some time, let the vent run, evacuate the fumes out of the engine compartment before you start that motor. We'll let that run for a few minutes here. Actually, I've already started the engine, so I can start now, but for you, let it run for a few minutes and then start your engine. Once you fire the engine, we're gonna hook up the flush hose, let this engine get up to temp. All right, we're gonna connect our flush hose. Quick disconnect. This will be in various places on Yamahas over the years, sometimes back here, sometimes inside the boat. They're always the same type of connection though. It's important to make sure you're running good pressure here. Run one engine at a time. Don't split them off into Ys. Just do the first one. Let it run for about 5 minutes. Once the temperature is good and warm, oil's gonna be nice and fluid. It's gonna flow easy. You'll pull more oil out of the engine if the oil's nice and warm. If this video has been helpful to you, I want you to do me a favor. Bomb the like button below. That really helps us out a lot. It helps others find this video easily on YouTube. Let's get back to it. All right, so we flushed our engine out, got the temperature up to where the oil's nice and fluid. It'll pull out much easier. Now, before we get started on extracting the oil, I want to point out you'll get 4 quarts of oil on this oil change kit for the 1.8 liter engines. On MR1 engines, you're going to get like 3 quarts of oil. I think the same thing on the TR1s. You may look in your owner's manual and it may say that it has 5 quarts of oil in the engine. You might wonder, why do I only have 4? Truth is, you won't get all the oil out. There's still going to be a little bit up inside the engine, and so you're only going to be given enough oil to replace what you can pull. Probably going to get 3.5 to 3 3/4 quarts out. It's important to start this extraction with an empty extractor like the one I have here. I've used this one a few times, but notice it's empty. We want to notate that it's empty, and when we get done, we want to notate how much oil we pulled out, and that's the amount of oil you want to put back in. Don't go try to put all 4 quarts in if you didn't pull 4 quarts out, okay? Also, I think it's interesting to note, inside this kit, they have a handy-dandy little funnel, so we don't have to use our funnel today. That's nice. One more thing I've been told in the years past, the oil filter coming off these engines brand new is different from the oil filter that you find in the oil change kit box. Don't worry, it's the same filter. These engines come from the factory with Waverunner filter with a different part number. These boat kits are parted for a boat kit. Same filter, different part number. Don't worry, this is the right filter. All right, moving on. Let's pull the oil out. To extract the oil from this engine, we're going to pull the dipstick. 1.8 liter, it's over on this side. MR1s, you're going to have a little fill in the back. TR1s, I'm not as sure, but I believe it's a dipstick like this. I'm going to pull the dipstick out, wipe off any extra oil, and we're going to set this aside. Notice I have my cardboard here in place to prevent from getting all this oil in places I don't want to. Clean off your hose before you go ramming this down inside that opening there. Make sure there's no trash, debris, something that you don't want getting down inside your engine. Use your napkin for that. Now we're going to take this hose, feed this down inside your dipstick opening. Now as you start to feed this down, this is relatively stiff, so we'll be able to kind of work it down, but there's going to come a place at the bottom where you're going to feel like it's bottomed out and it's stopping, but you're going to be able to continue on. If it's not going any further, don't jam it, but if you feel like you hit a spot where it stopped and you kind of twist on it a little bit, it may continue to go on down. You just want to find the bottom of the engine, right? So this is about where I found the bottom of the engine. Notating that, that's probably about 2 feet, a little more than 2 feet. I'm going to try to push it back in and see. Yeah, that's consistently kind of bottoming out there. All right, now we have found the bottom of the engine. We're going to begin this process of pumping out the oil. Make sure this is nice and seated. This is nice and seated, good suction. And we'll begin to pump. As you pump, it's going to start to capture pressure. See the oil coming out? See as it rushes up over the hose? And you're going to have to do this occasionally to maintain the pressure. It's not a completely sealed system, kind of like some of these battery-powered systems that you might see. So just continue to pump it. If you feel like you got a good vacuum, you can stop for a second. But if you feel like it's stopped flowing, give it a couple more pumps. Also, it's important to know that each of these little lines on the side of the bottle represent 1 quart. So 1 quart, 2 quart, 3 quart, 4, 5, and 6. So we're looking to get out of this one today. 1, 2, 3, up around half is about where this is going to end up. Also, I just noted that I felt like there was a lot of pressure building up, and I believe that the tip of the hose found the bottom of the engine, and I felt like there was a vacuum that was being applied, which means I wasn't getting any oil because it was sucked down to the bottom of the motor. So I pulled on the hose just about maybe 1/8 of an inch, and I felt like I got a lot more oil flow after I broke that little vacuum. All right, we are getting down real close to the bottom here. Pump it up a few more times here. You want to keep pumping until you stop getting oil out. If you get the oil nice and hot, you can get a lot out. If you don't get the oil nice and warm, you'll get less out. Those of you guys up in colder climates, if you want to run it a little more, get it 10 minutes on the hose. It's not going to hurt it to run it a little longer. Continue to pump until you don't get any more. You know, a lot of people won't continue on this step. They'll just kind of leave it alone. But honestly, if you can get that oil out of there, get as much as you can out, really best. Also, it's important to know that we ran the engines for about 5 minutes, and the oil that was in the oil pan or back in the bottom of the motor got sloshed up inside the engine, so it's running down the whole time. And so as we kind of pump, more oil is still running down into the bottom of the engine. So you'll get some more if you keep on pumping on it. It's not a big deal if you don't get every drop, don't get me wrong. All right, well, we have pulled out, we're at 3.5, just maybe a hair under, about 3.5 quarts. We're gonna go ahead and pull our extractor out of the dipstick port. And we're gonna take a rag with us, just so we're not dripping oil everywhere. We're gonna set this aside for a moment. I brought a box inside the boat with me just to set it in place, just in case there was any residual oil dripping. And I don't like things kind of all over the place, so I'll put me a rag down there just in case if things dripping. There we go. All right, dipstick, it's been cleaned. Take this and put it back in place. We'll check our oil levels in a minute here after we've done the fill. I'm noticing on this boat, I've got a hose that's kind of in the way. It's gonna be a little fun getting to it, but we'll get there. I'm gonna put some towels down underneath. Just kind of right underneath where that oil would want to run out. There's a hose below it. I could pinch it on that hose so that it's not going to fall down on me. There we go. That's good. See if we can get this guy in place. Yep, I'm feeling it. Starting to rotate. So we'll reach down underneath and make sure we don't have any oil leaking out as we turn this thing off. I've broken it loose, so I don't need the wrench anymore. I'm going to take that, set it aside. When you get done here, pull your plug off and immediately point this end downward so you don't spill any oil out of that. What I'll probably do is go back over and pour the excess oil into the extractor so I can determine how much oil was in the filter as well. That'll tell me a lot about the oil that's going back in. See how I've done that there. Prep time is important. It'll save you from making a mess like I just did. It's not bad, but I do have to do a little cleanup here. Be cautious not to get a bunch of dirt on the threads, debris all around here. All right, now we've got the filter off. We're going to pour the oil that's in the filter into the canister here. Probably a good idea to have yourself a funnel handy, just so you don't make a big mess here. We'll take this and dump it in here. Wasn't a lot in there, ounce or two. All right, that'll give me an accurate reading for how much oil we pulled out. Let me show you what I was talking about with the spark plug, or with the oil filter. I keep wanting to call this a spark plug. Pull the filter out of the box here. This is what came in the oil change kit. Notice that the filter is the same. 69J13, pouring oil all over the boat. That's why you put cardboard down. 69J13440-04. 69J13440-04. So they have finally changed the filters in the kits to match, but some of these older boats I've seen have different filter numbers on them. Just don't be freaked out. If you see that, you're fine. Have a little plastic cover here. Remove that. Trick my dad taught me growing up, teaching me how to do oil changes. How many of you guys had a dad out there that did this? But my dad did this. Take you a little bit of fresh oil. Take you a sharp object of some kind, because it's got a little seal. What we like to do is just take our finger, dab it down in there in the oil, and then rub this around on the little O-ring there. Also, it's important to note that the previous filter, the O-ring did indeed come off. So if you didn't pay attention to that, see how the O-ring came off? It's important. Make sure that does come off. You don't want to put this on with two O-rings in there. It won't seal properly. All right. Now we're going to put our cap back on so we don't spill any oil anywhere. Set this here before I stain something up. There we go there. All right. We're going to thread this back in place. Just go slow. Try not to cross thread it. That'd be a nightmare. All right. Helping that O-ring seal there, pre-lubricated, makes it a little easier to tighten this down. All right, for your pro tip for this video, do not use the wrench to put the filter on. You want to do that by hand. Use your napkin so you can get a good torque on it, but just torque it by hand. There we go. Nice and snug. All right, we've put the oil filter back on. We're going to use our handy dandy little Yamaha filter here. Pop the little top off. Flip it open. On the top of the engine here, you've got a little fill valve here, fill port. On the MR1s, engine oil fills in the back. You actually pull the oil out the same place you pour the oil in, but on the 1.8, you have a separate little dipstick there. TR1s, I'm sorry I don't have information specifically today about that, but TR1s, I believe, have a separate oil fill as well. So we're going to put in 3.5 quarts. We got 3.5 quarts out. I'm going to put 3.5 quarts in. Make sure you hold this paper filter in place, just so you don't, doesn't pop out of the hole. It just doesn't have a real long tip, so it's difficult to see if you've got it firmly in the hole there. Just hold it down as you pour. One down. People ask sometimes, is it important to always use Yamaha lube? And the answer is, it's not going to void your warranty if you don't. But I really prefer Yamaha lube because this oil is made by Yamaha purposely for their engines, so it's not just an advertising slogan. They're formulated specifically for these engines. So if you want the very best for your engine, I really think Yamaha's the best way to go. Now, last quart. We're only going to give about a half of this bottle. So before we pour here, I want to show you on the side. First timers, I'm going to show right here, it says 1 quart down to 0 there. So we're going to get down to about this 16 mark or so here. That's going to be our midpoint. Here we are at about 22. Here we are at about 17 or 18. Just kind of sneak up on it, you know. There it is right there, 16. That's 3.5. Take our little paper filter, wipe up any excess. We'll put our cap back in place. One final step when you're finished with your oil change. This is really best to do before you put the filter on, the oil filter on, but if you have done it like me after the fact, you can still add this step after the fact. These filters in salt water are kind of notorious for rusting out if you don't get a nice bead of grease around the perimeter of the filter, either before or after you install it. So we're going to put a little, a nice heavy bead of marine grease. This is STP version. Just heavy marine grease is what you want. We're going to put it around the perimeter of the oil filter. So you'll watch that real quick here. I'm trying to demonstrate this for you. Keep your rag handy, it's going to be messy. I'm going to go heavy on this stuff. This is really not as important on freshwater boats, but for you saltwater guys, this is a very critical step because we hear that these filters can actually rust out, and that's going to be a big issue down the road. This is much easier to do if you do this before the filter goes on. I just had forgotten this step when I was at that stage of the video. And that, my friends, is an oil change on your Yamaha boat. The opposite engine on this boat, same motor, so it's the same process. We won't bore you with the details. I'm going to do the same thing on that one. Well, that's the oil change for you. If you like what you've seen, it's been helpful to you, I'm going to ask you a favor. Bomb the like button below. That's going to help other people find this video. It's also very helpful to us. If you need an oil change kit, winterization kit, spark plugs, things like that, mechanical related stuff for your Yamaha boat, Yamaha Waverunner, visit JetBoatPilot.com. We've got all those items in the store to help you out with that. Thanks for watching.